It was a bitterly cold evening in Munich, November 1923. A small, restless crowd of men in brown uniforms gathered in a beer hall, their eyes fixed on a short, mustachioed man standing on a table, his voice trembling with rage and conviction. He promised them that Germany would rise again, that their humiliation after the Great War would be avenged, and that a new empire would be forged by their hands. Few in that room could have imagined that the man screaming at the top of his lungs, Adolf Hitler, would soon plunge the world into its deadliest war, murdering millions and rewriting human history in blood. Hitler's story is not only the tale of one man's madness. It is the story of how a failed artist and drifter, born in the small Austrian town of Braunau am Inn in 1889, transformed into one of the most infamous dictators in world history. His journey was shaped by poverty, rejection, manipulation, war trauma, propaganda, and an uncanny ability to tap into people's fears. To truly understand Hitler is to peer into the darkest corners of the human soul, where ambition, hatred, and charisma combine to unleash destruction on an unimaginable scale.
Adolf Hitler was born on April 20th, 1889, to Alois Hitler and Clara Polzo. Alois was a strict, often abusive customs official who demanded discipline from his children. Adolf was closest to his mother, Clara, whose warmth provided a refuge from his father's cruelty. Historians often speculate that Alois's violent temper and domineering nature planted seeds of defiance and resentment in young Adolf. From a young age, Hitler was not exceptional in academics. Teachers described him as lazy, dreamy, and quick-tempered. But there was one subject that fascinated him: history. He devoured stories of Germany's past glory, military victories, and heroic leaders like Frederick the Great. While other children played outside, Adolf fantasized about battles and imagined himself as a great commander. When Hitler was 13, his father died suddenly of a lung hemorrhage. For many children, this would have been devastating, but for Adolf, it was a strange kind of liberation. No longer under his father's shadow, he grew closer to his mother. Yet tragedy soon struck again. In 1907, Clara died of breast cancer, leaving the 18-year-old Adolf heartbroken, penniless, and directionless. He would carry her memory with him for the rest of his life, often idealizing her as a symbol of purity.
After his mother's death, Hitler moved to Vienna, the capital of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, with dreams of becoming an artist. He applied twice to the prestigious Academy of Fine Arts, but was rejected both times. His drawings, the board concluded, lacked talent, especially in depicting the human figure. Rejection devastated Hitler. He lived in cheap hostels, sometimes homeless, selling postcard sketches to survive. He spent long hours in libraries and coffee houses, not only reading books about history, architecture, and German nationalism, but also absorbing radical political ideas. Vienna was a city boiling with ethnic tensions, especially between Germans, Slavs, Jews, and Hungarians. Hitler, already bitter and lonely, began to channel his frustrations into blaming others for his failures. Anti-Semitism was rampant in Vienna at the time, and Hitler found in it an explanation for his misfortune. He began to see Jews not as individuals, but as enemies of the German people. Later, he would claim that his entire worldview crystallized during these years of struggle and rejection.
In 1913, Hitler moved to Munich, Germany. When World War I erupted in 1914, he eagerly enlisted in the German army. For the first time in his life, Hitler felt a sense of belonging. He served as a dispatch runner on the Western Front, delivering messages between command posts under fire. Though often reckless, he survived countless battles, including the brutal Battle of the Somme. Hitler was awarded the Iron Cross for bravery, a medal he wore with pride for the rest of his life. But more than medals, the war gave him purpose. He witnessed the destruction, the mud-filled trenches, the gas attacks, and the loss of millions of lives. For him, the war was not meaningless. It was proof that struggle was the essence of life. When Germany surrendered in 1918, Hitler was devastated. He lay in a hospital recovering from a gas attack when the news arrived. The empire he believed in had collapsed. The proud German army was forced to accept humiliating terms in the Treaty of Versailles: massive reparations, territorial losses, and military restrictions. Hitler, like many veterans, felt betrayed. They called it the stab-in-the-back myth, the idea that Germany had not lost the war on the battlefield, but had been betrayed by corrupt politicians, communists, and Jews. This belief would become the foundation of Hitler's ideology. After the war, Germany was in chaos. Inflation skyrocketed, food was scarce, and political violence filled the streets. It was in this climate that Hitler found his stage. In 1919, he joined the German Workers' Party, a tiny nationalist group. His speaking skills quickly drew attention. Unlike many politicians, Hitler spoke not in cold statistics, but with fiery passion. He screamed, gestured, and hypnotized his listeners with promises of German revival. By 1920, the party changed its name to the National Socialist German Workers' Party, the Nazis. Their program combined extreme nationalism, anti-Semitism, anti-communism, and promises to restore Germany's greatness. Hitler's charisma transformed the Nazis from a fringe group into a rising force.
In 1923, Hitler attempted his first grab for power. Inspired by Mussolini's successful march on Rome, Hitler and his followers stormed a Munich beer hall, declaring a revolution. Armed men marched through the streets, hoping to seize control of Bavaria and eventually Germany. But the coup failed. Police opened fire, killing several Nazis. Hitler was arrested and charged with treason. Yet this was no end for him. It was a beginning. During his trial, Hitler turned the courtroom into his stage, portraying himself as a patriot who had only tried to save Germany. His speeches were widely reported, making him famous across the nation. Sentenced to 5 years in prison, Hitler served only 9 months. During his confinement, he wrote Mein Kampf, a rambling manifesto outlining his beliefs: the superiority of the Aryan race, the hatred of Jews, the need for a strong dictator, and the dream of expanding German territory to the east. Many dismissed it as incoherent ranting. Few realized it was a blueprint for genocide and war.
The Great Depression of 1929 gave Hitler his opportunity. Millions of Germans were unemployed. Banks collapsed, and people lost faith in democracy. The Nazis promised jobs, national pride, and scapegoats. Hitler traveled across Germany, delivering electrifying speeches to packed crowds. He mastered propaganda, using radio, posters, and parades to spread his message. By 1933, the Nazis became the largest party in the Reichstag. That January, President Paul von Hindenburg reluctantly appointed Hitler as chancellor, thinking he could be controlled. They were gravely mistaken. Within months, Hitler consolidated power. The Reichstag fire allowed him to declare emergency powers. Political opponents were arrested, free press silenced, and soon all opposition parties banned. Germany had become a dictatorship.
After Hindenburg's death in 1934, Hitler declared himself Führer, leader of Germany. The Nazi state was born. Under his rule, life was strictly controlled. Propaganda glorified him as Germany's savior. Youth were indoctrinated in Nazi ideology, taught to worship Hitler and prepare for war. The persecution of Jews escalated. In 1935, the Nuremberg laws stripped them of citizenship and banned intermarriage with Germans. On November 9, 1938, Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass, Nazi mobs attacked Jewish businesses, synagogues, and homes. Thousands were arrested, and the road to the Holocaust began. Hitler's ambitions, however, extended far beyond domestic control. He wanted to create a vast empire, a Third Reich that would last 1,000 years. Hitler began by defying the Treaty of Versailles. He rebuilt Germany's military, reoccupied the Rhineland, and annexed Austria in 1938. Britain and France, desperate to avoid another war, followed a policy of appeasement. At the Munich conference, they allowed Hitler to take the Sudetenland from Czechoslovakia in exchange for a promise of peace. But Hitler had no intention of stopping. In September 1939, Germany invaded Poland. Britain and France declared war. World War II had begun.
Hitler's armies unleashed blitzkrieg, lightning war. Tanks, planes, and infantry moved with stunning speed, overwhelming Poland in weeks. In 1940, Germany crushed Denmark, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, and France. Within months, Hitler controlled most of Western Europe. Only Britain stood defiant. In the summer of 1940, Hitler launched the Battle of Britain, a massive air assault. London burned under German bombs, but the Royal Air Force held firm. For the first time, Hitler was stopped.
In June 1941, Hitler made his most fateful decision, invading the Soviet Union. Operation Barbarossa was the largest invasion in history, with over 3 million German soldiers. At first, the Wehrmacht advanced rapidly, capturing vast territories. But the Soviet Union did not collapse. The harsh winter, vast distances, and fierce resistance slowed the Germans. By late 1942, the tide turned at Stalingrad. After months of brutal fighting, the German Sixth Army was encircled and destroyed. Hitler refused to allow retreat, leading to catastrophic losses. Stalingrad marked the beginning of Nazi Germany's downfall. While the war raged, Hitler pursued his most horrifying vision, the extermination of Jews. The final solution was implemented: mass deportations to concentration camps and extermination camps like Auschwitz, Treblinka, and Sobibor. Millions of Jews, along with Romani people, disabled individuals, political prisoners, and others, were systematically murdered in gas chambers. The Holocaust remains one of the darkest chapters in human history, a crime so vast and brutal that it defies comprehension.
By 1944, the Allies had landed in Normandy, liberating France. The Soviets pushed from the east. Germany was being crushed from both sides. Yet Hitler, isolated in his bunker in Berlin, refused to accept defeat. He issued impossible orders, executed generals who disagreed, and ranted about betrayal. On April 30th, 1945, as Soviet troops closed in on Berlin, Hitler shot himself in his underground bunker. His body was burned by loyal aides. The war in Europe ended days later. Hitler left behind a world scarred by war, with over 70 million dead, cities reduced to rubble, and millions traumatized by the Holocaust. He remains a symbol of absolute evil, a reminder of how fragile democracy can be, and how dangerous unchecked hatred becomes when combined with power. And yet, his story is also a cautionary tale. Hitler was not born a monster. He was shaped by rejection, resentment, war, and a society in crisis. He rose not only because of his own ambition, but because millions followed him, blinded by fear and seduced by promises. The rise and fall of Adolf Hitler is more than history. It is a warning for the future.